Good afternoon and welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. Total eclipse of the heart. We're getting ready for it. Got my glasses, and attorney Rickey Wilkins is in the studio. He has his glasses. This show I am really excited about for a number of reasons. I've known attorney Rickey Wilkins for years. I had an opportunity to serve with him and under his leadership as a member of the Memphis Housing Authority Board. And let me just say, under his leadership, the Housing Authority turned around. I mean, it is phenomenal when you look at the accomplishments that he helped lead over the last 20 years. And take into account as well that he is one of the top attorneys in this country, quite frankly. I would tell people when they would call me saying that they needed an attorney, there are only like three or four that I would name, and out of the top two, attorney Rickey Wilkins will always and has always been one of them. Attorney Rickey Wilkins, welcome to Dialogue with Deidre.
Thank you, Deidre, and thank you so much, very much, for having me today on your show for this most important dialogue. I'm so looking forward to it. I want to thank you for your service. You've been one who has shown and demonstrated leadership and a commitment to the community that is needed. And wherever the challenges have surfaced and wherever the need has arisen, you've been there. And I've watched you, admired you from afar, worked closely with you up front. And so it's an honor for me to sit here in your studio and have this dialogue about some very pressing issues that are unfolding in our community.
Let me just say, Rickey, probably maybe about 6 months ago, you gave me a call to say that there are issues that are pressing in our community, Deidre, and that we have been dormant, we have not talked about, we have not addressed, and that at this point and this time in your life, that you're willing to, and you've done this all along, Rickey, step up and lead the charge when it comes to economic development and social issues facing the African American community. And Mem-Power.
Mem-Power.
Let's talk about Mem-Power.
Well, Mem-Power really, Deidre, came about as a thought, candidly, while I was lying in the hospital bed for 2 weeks, undergoing some extensive surgeries, dealing with a current medical condition that I have. I was tied down for 2 weeks, which for me is an eternity because I get up running every day as fast as I can. And but the Lord has a way of slowing us down.
Yes, He does.
So that He can talk to us and give us guidance and direction on what next to do. And so I'm grateful that He slowed me down, laid me down long enough to talk to me. And during those conversations, I made a decision that issues that we all know about, that we all are concerned about, we're not totally and fully dedicated to addressing.
Why do you think that is, Rickey?
Well, there's several reasons. There's apathy, there's indifference, there's fear, there's lack of awareness, and there's a stranglehold on the African American community that is palpable, it is strong, it is powerful, and it paralyzes people. It mutes and silences people. I saw it when I ran for Congress back in 2014. And I want to mention that issue because it kind of plays into the whole idea behind Mem-Power. When I was not successful in winning that race, I couldn't understand why under the circumstances. I couldn't understand how a majority African American community would have one of its sons who had done everything that we tell our children to do.
Right.
Who had the best education, had shown, multi-decade-long commitment to improving the quality of life of people, by the way, for free. Never got paid a dime, never sought a dime. Did it out of love and out of repaying a debt that I still believe I owe to a community of people that believed in a young poor kid and helped inspire and motivate him and discipline him and keep him on track. When I ran for Congress in 2014, I became acutely aware of just how desperate, how pained, how powerless, how afraid far too many of our people are.
Yeah.
So much so that God has placed in our hands power to improve our condition. And yet, many of our people are afraid to use that power to improve their condition and then turn that power over to those who use that power against us.
Why do you think they're afraid, Rickey? Why?
Well, we'll get real deep into this conversation. Some of this stuff is historic.
Right. But when you think about how you grew up.
There's a book called The Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery.
Okay.
That I would recommend people read. Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery. You've heard the phrase oftentimes stated that when the slaves were freed, they took the chains off of our ankles and off of our hands. But in many respects, they remain locked
in our mind. Yeah.
In our minds.
Right.
So much so that we live in a community where we accept the reality, even though we are the majority in the community, that all of the leading political positions that we have, that we should control, are in the hands of someone other than African American. Our major political positions. I challenge you to find another major city in America where that reality exists.
Right.
Because the struggle for freedom and equality has been built on the backs of black men and women who put everything on the line that we might have a fighting chance to gain some power to improve our condition. We don't control the economic scene.
Right.
So the only thing that's really within your grasp is political power. And if that's all you have and you give that away, then what do you have left? You have what you got now. And that is a community where black folks are in last place, every place that matters.
What do you say to that person out there, though, Rickey, who will say to us when we say these types of things to them, that black folk here in Memphis have had political power, have had political leadership, and what have they done with that?
Well,
why should we then turn around and give it back to them?
Let me explain it very clearly. You see, I'm a student of history.
Right.
And I know that no matter, you cannot fairly measure 200 years of white control and white dominance with 20 years of black leadership.
Okay.
And those 200 years were used with all of the power of the people and government to put in place obstacles and mechanisms to thwart the growth and productivity of African American people. That is a truth, and I defy anybody to stop me when I'm lying on that.
Okay.
So when you talk about Harrington coming along in 1991 and inheriting this 200 years of prior construction and foundation and architecting and engineering of a system that's designed to prevent the masses of black folks from realizing their full potential, You can't expect that to overturn in 20 years.
Okay.
So I say to you, and that's the reason why Mem-Power is coming to a town near you. We gotta gain back the power that we lost. Because if you give me and our people 30, 40, 50, 100 years of leadership,
right,
then come back to me if we haven't improved and say, well, you had it. I'm saying to you that in the context of the entire spectrum, 200 years of white control and dominance where the government worked in conspiracy with the bigots and the racists, and this is all true. I'm not here speaking anything that's not true. We all know it to be true. I'm just laying the foundation for a new narrative and a new conversation so that we understand it. Those folks who want to say, well, you had power for 20 years and what did you do with it, don't understand the depth of what happens when you are under 200 years of bondage.
That's the reason it's important to have this dialogue now, right, Rickey?
Absolutely.
Because there are some people who do have that mindset, because we hear it. I mean, when we're out in the community and we're talking about
the totality of the harmful effects and the continuing, lingering effects of that 200 years of dominance.
We hear it every day. If an African American business has one blip, right?
Absolutely.
One blip.
Absolutely.
And black folk even won't want to use them again.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so think about the majority, right? So we have to be able to have this conversation and be able to say, if we make one mistake, that's one mistake, right? Majority firms have made mistakes before.
All day, every day.
And they continue to get business.
All day, every day.
So Mem-Power is about, what, dispelling some of the rumors that are out there and dealing with the facts when it comes to business opportunities, political opportunities right here in Memphis. Is that right, Rickey?
Mem-Power is about bringing forth to the people, black and white and everybody else in the middle of the spectrum, the truth about a city that has never been fair in its history to black folks. Never in its entire history has the city that I love, the one that birthed me, been fair to the masses of its largest asset. I say to my white friends and my Jewish friends, and I do have a lot of them, believe it or not, we got to get serious about speaking the truth to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Black folk need to understand that your fear and your apathy and your indifference and your failure to pay attention is creating opportunities for those who mean you no good to further put in place mechanisms to keep you locked down, locked in, locked up, because we've got our attention distracted elsewhere. Let me talk for a brief minute about economics, because this is important. And my good brother, Pastor Whalum, has been talking about this for a lot of years.
Yes, he has. Kenneth Whalum.
But let me say this to Pastor Whalum. Thank God that you have remained committed and speaking on this subject for all these years. We need to hear him. Listen to me. Everybody needs to understand this, black and white. We are living in a system that is predicated and based on a foundation that is unhealthy and unsustainable. The African American community is potentially the greatest asset the city of Memphis ever has or ever will have. And when appreciated and embraced as opposed to stiff-armed, the community can realize the benefit of that resilient group of people who know nothing but how to overcome adversity. But because of the limited and short-mindedness of a few people who want to call themselves, quote, supreme, they would rather lock down that talent than embrace it and see it flourish, which could, in my mind, make the community better for everybody. Now, here's a strong message to black folks.
Okay, let's hear it.
You spend the majority of your money with white businesses. That's well documented. Black folks, you spend a majority of your money outside of your communities. Businessmen and women in your communities aren't good enough for you. Maybe you still think white folks' ice is cold, or maybe you think you're going to get a better deal because you go into court with a white lawyer. I don't know what your warped thinking is today. But here's the killing part about that. White people, by and large, do not do business with you. So they take home all of their resources and spend it among themselves, and then they take home most of your resources. So then I ask your listening audience, what then is left for black folks? The answer is the crumbs that are left over after everybody else has harvested and feasted. And when you extrapolate that phenomenon over decades and decades and decades, then you get to understand the widening gap that has created and developed in this community that's so wide now that our young kids don't even think they got a fighting chance.
So Rickey, on the other side of this break, Attorney Wilkins, what I'd like to do is come back and let's talk about what are some of the solutions as you see it. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre. We'll be back in a moment.
My mom is stronger than anyone I've ever known. Growing up when life got hard, her strength helped pull us through. Even after her heart failure diagnosis, she remained stronger than ever.
My family's support keeps me strong. Together, we're rising above heart failure.
Heart failure doesn't have to steal your strength. For simple steps you can take to help prevent, improve, or manage heart failure, go to riseabovehf.org.
For centuries, the hopes, dreams, and promise of this great nation
has been shaped by the African American experience.
Now comes a museum to honor this legacy.
And finally tell their story. Tell all our stories.
A story of courage.
A story of achievement.
The story of a great American people continues. Help us make sure it's heard.
Hi, I'm Venus Williams. You know, I heard recently that the two main reasons for not getting an annual mammogram are limited access and fear. I know that there are low cost and even free screenings at some hospitals and clinics, and I've even heard of mobile mammogram units in some areas. Talk about service. Look, I know getting a screening is not as exciting as shopping, but life is for living. So take the first step to breast health. Get the mammogram. For more information, please visit breastcancerawareness.com.
Did you know that hypertension is a universal risk factor for heart disease and stroke, the leading causes of death and disability in the United States? You can reduce your risk by remembering 3 words: check, change, control. The American Heart Association wants you to take control of your heart health with the help of the Check, Change, Control program, a free online health management tool available at heart360.org. It's free, it's easy, and it's up to you to take control of your heart health. Find out more at heart360.org.
Welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. I am enjoying this dialogue that we're having today with attorney Rickey WIlkins, a good friend of mine, and he is the founder of Mem-Power. I mean, it is a movement that is taking on here in this city. He has speaking engagements across this city, and if you're interested in having Rickey come speak to one of your groups, just reach out to me, and I'll make sure that we coordinate that with him, because he has a powerful message about African Americans and the African American spin African American when it comes to economics. And it's not just African Americans, it is the total community and what we should be doing to empower the majority of Memphians. And so, Rickey, let's talk about that.
Well, a couple things, just by way of brief history. I came back home to Memphis in May of 1990 after graduating from Vanderbilt Law School. I joined the law firm of Birch, Porter and Johnson, where I had the privilege of practicing with Mr. Lucius Birch and Mike Cody and others until Mr. Birch died in 1996. I became a partner in 1997. I left the firm in 2003 and started my own firm.
But Rickey, before you go on,
yes,
I think important to tell people the story from the beginning, how you grew up in South Memphis.
Oh yeah.
I think that's important, because legal part, that's just phenomenal,
right,
but how you grew up.
Well, I will say this. I live my life every day to be an example for the fact that there are kids who grow up in the hood every day.
That's right.
Who are every bit as capable of displaying the most brilliant minds and achievement of anybody on the planet. I believe that deep in my heart.
Right.
When I had the good fortune to leave Carver High School and Riverview Junior High School and go to Howard University and then to Vanderbilt Law School and then to start practicing law at Vanderbilt, I never once felt that I wasn't prepared to compete, because I'd been taught by teachers who taught me that I was a winner.
That's right.
That I was as good as anybody. I just needed to go out and work hard and do what I had to do. And it didn't matter that I grew up poor, born to a teenage mother.
That's right.
It didn't matter that my dad had never came around. It didn't matter that I, had people sending me food stamps when I was in college. None of that mattered.
That's right.
Only thing that mattered was I had to appreciate that God gives everybody 24 hours.
That's right.
24 hours every day in which to manufacture your greatness. Some of us take that 24 hours seriously, and we use it to improve our condition and the condition of our families and the larger community. And others, for whatever reason, choose not to.
That's right.
But we all get that opportunity. And part of what Mem-Power speaks to and about is that power that rests and resides in what I believe in all of us is stifled in this community for far too many people.
Mm-hmm.
The people who have run this community decided that the greatest value coming from the African American community would be based on the utilization of our hands, not our brains. And so that's why today, once you get corporate greed kicking in, wages are stagnated, temporary job services are popping up everywhere you can imagine.
Everywhere, proliferation. Yes.
Benefits are being taken away, pensions are being taken away, because those folks who are at the top simply no longer have the kind of commitment to being a good corporate citizen, so to speak, as they once did. And so we're seeing now people are willing to take home untoward fortunes at the expense and on the backs of folks who don't even have enough to survive.
That's right.
And it starts a vicious downward cycle from which many people get caught up and never escape.
Right.
I'll give you a quick example. High school classmate of mine had a speeding ticket. Now somebody might say, well, he shouldn't have been speeding. Well, we all speed. I've gotten lots of speeding tickets.
Yeah.
The only difference between my speeding ticket and his speeding ticket was I could pay mine.
That's right.
He was out of a job. He couldn't pay his. So when he didn't pay his ticket, that started a downward spiral. He still had to get to work because he got small babies at home to take care of. So he's driving to work. Now he gets pulled over again, broken tail light, whatever it is. Oh, your license has been suspended because you didn't pay this ticket. Keep going forward. They put you on probation.
Right.
He still got to feed his family, so he's still trying to get to work. He gets pulled over again. Back at or around that time, they had what was called the 3 strikes you're out law, where even nonviolent offenders were being sent away for 10, 15, 20 years.
That's right.
What starts out as some simple proposition that a person of means would simply pay off, move on in life, flip it off his shoulder like a gnat, becomes an albatross around the necks of somebody who doesn't have the ability to pay that bill. Same crime, so to speak, same infraction, but the consequences far, far different.
Right.
We now live in a community where the criminal justice system penalizes and punishes people and incarcerates people for being poor and unable to pay. And we got to change that.
Right.
If you're a nonviolent offender and again, I'm not justifying you driving without a license, but I understand if you got to get to work and you have no other means because the mass transportation system is inadequate in this city. That's another issue we have to deal with. But you got to do what you got to do to try to protect your family and give your family a fighting chance to survive. And in so doing, you get caught up in a web that you can't escape from.
So Rickey, what do we do? I mean, you mentioned the ticket situation. It's the same thing with juvenile court child support issues.
Same thing.
You don't pay, you can get locked up, and If you get locked up, you can't go to work, you can't pay child support. It's a vicious cycle. What do we do to try and work towards some of these solutions that our community?
Well, one thing I
facing?
want to say, and this might upset some folks, but it's okay. I think much of these policies, many of these policies that are coming down the pike are intentional in terms of the end result that manifests when legislatures growing increasingly conservative and less compassionate and less concerned about improving people's lives, more concerned about continuing to feed the criminal justice complex and the mass incarceration that we're seeing unfold before our very eyes.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
We've got to, and what I say all people of goodwill have got to do is to look at those issues through a different lens. Because I maintain, as I said on an interview the other day, the same child that's out here now trying to figure out who his next easy victim or target may be for mugging or carjacking could, if given the right direction, motivation, and guidance, be the one to find a cure for cancer.
That's right.
We have to decide as a community, are we going to take our citizens and view them as assets to be nourished and flourished, or are we going to view them as liabilities? And far too often in this community, we've not given, certainly the African American community, the bare minimum that's necessary to survive, much less thrive. And that's why we have the calamity that we have playing out in the streets and the body count that is exhibit A for what happens when you overnourish one sector of the community at the expense of the largest sector of the community. It is by no surprise, or should be by no surprise, when a small sector of the people take home 90-95% of the resources to their communities and leaving everybody else fighting and scratching and hating and backstabbing and carjacking over the rest, that the calamity unfolds.
And that's what's going on.
That's exactly what's going on.
Black businesses, or let's just say black businesses, not just minority businesses, but black businesses, we're fighting over the scraps, right?
Absolutely.
When, we shouldn't be just fighting over the small minority piece. We should all be working in concert together to say, my firm's great, your firm's great, let's go forward, and let's see if we can get a larger piece of the pie, right? So, Rickey, how do we get there? I mean,
right.
Is it political?
Let's
talk about these solutions.
Let's talk about it for a second, because as part of Mem-Power, I have a comprehensive plan.
I know you do.
It first starts with local government leaders taking responsibility for the condition of the people. And what I mean by that is this: no matter who you are, when you put yourself forward to be a public servant, a leader of the people, you take on the conditions that exist at the time you take your oath of office. Now, in some communities and in some districts, things are going really, really well. So maybe that council person or whomever may have an easy job.
Okay.
But there are other parts of the community where people are literally wandering and dying in the wilderness.
Right.
And they need a strong leader
so
that's going to stand up for them and make them priority number one. One of the things I'm saying in my empowerment series is that the largest sector of this community deserves to be the number one priority, because we are the most maligned, the most depressed, the most suppressed, the most oppressed, the most discriminated against. We're last in every category that matters, and therefore we're the ones that's most in need of immediate attention. And I like to say this: if I'm on call in the operating room And I walk into the room and I've got a room full of patients. One person's got a broken leg. One person has a gash on his head, but it's not life-threatening. One person may have another condition. And then over in the corner, I got a patient that's got a massive wound, and he's hemorrhaging. If I don't go and give immediate attention to that patient, he or she's going to bleed out.
Right.
They're going to die. And what's happening in Memphis, Tennessee, as this body count continues to rise, day after day and year after year, is that the proverbial physicians are coming in to give medical care, but they're not treating the ones who are in most need of the greatest care first. Black folk have to be the priority because we're the ones historically that have never been treated fairly and never been given a fair, balanced playing field on which to display our talents.
So how do we get black folk to see and think about this in terms of translating it to, transitioning it to the people that we elect? Because at the end of the day, Rickey, if we don't elect people that value the majority in this city as the priority, then we're going to continue to have the same results.
Well, let me give you again another bit of history. Again, some folks are not going to like it, but it's going to be the truth.
Okay.
And I'm going to say it one more time. Stop me when I'm lying. Prior to 1991, when W.W. Harrington was elected as the first African-American mayor of Memphis, I'm going to stop pounding your table. Fold my arms. Prior to 1991,
right,
the city of Memphis had been ruled by white leadership again for that 200 years prior. Most people don't know this, but black folks were the swing vote for the election of Boss Crump. Most people don't know that black folks were the swing vote for the election of Mayor Loeb. Black folks, swing vote. But look at how God works and operates. When the U.S. Supreme Court passed Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 and said separate but equal would no longer be the law of the land, and used the force of the federal government to desegregate school systems around the nation, white flight took place in Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
And when white flight took place in Memphis, Tennessee, black folks' demographics began to rise. Because white folks decided, I'm not sending my child to no school where all these black kids are going to be. Listen, some people don't like this, but it is the truth, and I'm not going to be afraid to tell it. It is the truth.
It's the truth.
When white flight took place,
not just here, but across the country,
across the nation.
Right.
That's why all the private schools started being created and developed.
That's right.
Because white folks made a decision. They drew a line in the sand, much like I'm telling black folks now, we got to draw a line in the sand relative to our poor economic condition in this community. They say, I don't give a damn what the Supreme Court says. I'm taking my kids out of there. And they did.
Right.
And then the political leadership spent public money to build the infrastructure and the schools outside of the city limits so that the kids could have the newest and best equipment and schools supplies to continue operating at the expense of black folks. It played itself out here even more recently when Memphis City Schools turned its charter over.
Right.
And the suburban districts who were part of Shelby County Schools couldn't wait to separate themselves.
Oh, they were going to do it whether we voted on the issue or not.
It didn't matter because, again, They were not going to see this large number of black kids come in and quote unquote take over the school environment where their kids are being educated. Now, let me be clear about this. We do have power that's in our hands to address these political issues. When you are the majority in the community, you ought to, by right, by simple mathematics, control the majority of the politics. Because if one man, one vote means anything, what it means is if a majority of people decide we're going to move in direction A, the minority that wants to move in direction B get overthrown, so to speak.
Right, right.
But black folks are so divided in Memphis, and this has been, I speak to this truthfully to my white friends and my Jewish friends. The historical problem with black leadership is and has been that we allow petty differences and fear and apathy keep us divided.
That's so true.
And the only way that a minority of people can control the majority of people is if the majority is afraid or indifferent, not paying attention, or divided. And that's why in my empowerment series, I talk about the fact that when we're out here operating on an island by ourselves, so to speak, you're weak and you're impotent.
Right. You
can't control anything. It's an embarrassment to me to talk to my friends from Howard University who went on to LA and Chicago and Atlanta and Charlotte and Miami and other places. I can't explain to them why black folks in Memphis don't utilize their political strength to seize as much power that's available to us if we get on one accord.
Let me just go ahead.
One final point on that.
Yes.
I want to say this to my white friends. If you look at the world through a different lens, it's going to be better for you too.
I don't think they understand that.
It's going to be better for you too. I'm going to give you an example.
Please do, because I don't think that. I think they think somebody's taking something.
Here's a classic example.
Yeah.
Here's a classic example. You're going to hear me talk about it a lot because it drives home the point. Prior to 1997, the game of golf was effectively, for 100 or so years prior, a white elite man's game.
Mm-hmm.
This is our creation. We created it, we developed it, we maintained it, we kept people in, we kept people out. We're fat, dumb, and happy in it. It's ours. Some of you need not apply. Took it as high as they could take it. Had all the corporate sponsors, all the celebrities, all of the great players. They took it as far as they could take it. And then along came one skinny black kid. One skinny black kid came along. Tiger Woods. And his presence alone changed the game of golf forever.
That's so true.
Made it exponentially more valuable than the white folks who controlled it previously could ever have imagined. Because if they had the power to take it to the level that Tiger did, they would have done it.
Right. Yeah.
But they didn't have that power.
Right.
They had maxed out. And all I'm saying to white folks is this: if you learn to embrace black folks and take advantage of the talent and the creativity and that undying ability to overcome adversity, you'll benefit from the greatest asset you'll ever know. But if you continue on the path that you're on, to let just a few black folks come through and be successful, and by the way, that comes with a price.
Right, exactly.
Because the few that they do let come through, they want to control.
And they don't know how to bring other folk along.
They want to tell them what to do, how to do it.
Right.
And listen, I'm not mad at them.
Right.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Right.
As I've seen it through my own eyes.
Right.
And I'm simply saying we got to make a change. To my friends and the black community and the white, first of all, black folks, you're living far beneath your means and far beneath your needs. And you got power in your hands that you're not using to improve your own condition. And that's on us.
Right.
That ain't on white folks.
Right.
I don't put everything on white folks. But then to white folks who control most of the economics in the community and have done so, by the way, since the beginning of the creation of this city, you need to rethink the way you view this African American citizenry. That will either be your greatest asset or your greatest liability. Pick your poison. You cannot contain the energy that's being stored up in the frustration of these young kids.
Right, that's right.
You can't contain it.
Ricky.
You are sitting on, I'm telling you, a powder keg. Because the kids know it ain't right. They were taught that the majority rules. As children, we were all taught that. Right. The majority rules. And yet in Memphis, Tennessee, black folks don't rule nothing. You don't control nothing. You don't own anything. Now, I know I'm speaking in global terms, and there are going to be some folks say, well, what about this person, and what about that person, and what about you, Ricky? You know, you've been successful. Well, listen, it's too few of us to even be talking about.
That is so true.
So don't talk to me about what I've done or what one or two other people have done. I'm talking about the masses of people.
But Ricky, I think it even just speaks volumes to the fact that you have been successful, and what you're talking about is empowering other people to be successful as well.
Well, Deidre,
black people.
Let me explain it to you very simply. When you're a poor kid like I grew up, born to a teenager mother, on welfare, eating potted meat, waiting on free turkeys, waiting on free Christmas baskets.
That's a lot of us, Ricky. Absolutely.
Living off of food stamps.
Yep.
If you got any kind of compassion when the Lord lifts you up and expands your territory, that's why I tell people I'm forever indebted.
Right.
I'm forever indebted. So I thank God that I have a simple prayer. One of my prayers is, Lord, no matter how high you lift me, keep my feet on the ground. I never want to be disconnected from the foundation on which I stand.
Right.
And it came up from a kid that had to learn how to climb the rough side of the mountain. That's why, Deidre, when they announced that I had brain cancer,
Right.
I looked at my doctor and I said, okay, no big deal. This is just one more hill to climb.
That's right.
I've been climbing hills my whole life. That's all I know how to do.
Serious warrior.
That's all I know how to do.
Your whole life.
So bring me your most adverse circumstance. Bring me your most difficult proposition. And I have the mindset and the willpower to overcome it. That's the way I think. That's the way I breathe. That's the way I live. And I try to do that to honor the God that created me, who told me that I was a winner. I was as good as anybody else.
Yeah.
And I do it to inspire and motivate our young folks who feel like that all hope is lost and that they can't have a fighting chance to be successful.
Well,
and I'm here to inspire them to know that the power is in our hands, but we got to have the courage and the will to step forward and take our rightful place.
Well, let me just say, Attorney Rickey Wilkins, if they don't feel empowered after watching this show, I just don't even know what to say. I want to publicly let you know how much I appreciate you, how much I appreciate the work that you're doing, and you are a man on a mission, and it is all about your people and educating them on the power that they have. And may God continue to bless you on this path, because our people need to hear what you have to say and the way you have to say it. So as you already know, I'm committed to working with you to do whatever.
And I'm blessed and honored to have you by my side.
To help advance the message. And so, Attorney Rickey Wilkins, you are welcome to come back on Dialogue with Deidre at any point, at any time, to share your message.
Can I say one final word?
One final word? You got it.
To everybody, I come in love, an undying love for this community. And I come in peace. I want everybody to know that. But I'm telling black folks and white folks and everybody in between, we're no longer going to go home without our rightful peace.
That's right.
Everybody needs to understand that. Everybody needs to understand that.
Rickey Wilkins, thanks so much for being on Dialogue with Deidre. I hope that my viewers have had an opportunity to hear his message, Mem-Power. Mem-Power is here and it's moving.
And it ain't going nowhere.
Ain't going nowhere. And so if you are interested in having Rickey come out and speak to one of your church groups or one of your organizations, please inbox me at the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page or the M1 TV Network Facebook page, and we will get that message to Rickey Wilkins and get you on his calendar. Before we wrap up, because I know all of you are trying to go see the solar eclipse because you got your glasses, right? I want to just say that we have lost a giant in the civil rights community and in the entertainment community with the passing of Dick Gregory.
My Lord.
Dick Gregory passed at 84 years old. He was on the civil rights line fighting for us, Rickey.
Yes, he was.
And so we want to let everybody know that he will definitely be missed. Jerry Lewis, also 91 years old, just passed, and another comedian, great comedian that this country has ever known. So thank you so much for watching Dialogue with Deidre. We'll be back with you. If not later this week, on next Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have any comments on the show, you know how to email me at deidre@deidremalone.com. Thanks so much for watching. God bless.
Groundbreaking political activist and comedian Dick Gregory passed away this weekend at a hospital in Washington, D.C. He was 84. Here's Roxana Saberi.
For Dick Gregory, comedy was more than about making people laugh.
If them cops that's shooting your children, if they shot dogs like that, white folks would burn the police station down all over the world. Huh?
He began breaking barriers by appealing to white crowds with witty remarks about racism in America.
But there are a lot of good advantages riding in the back of a bus. Next time you get on the bus, you knows where that emergency door is located.
A native of St. Louis, Missouri, Gregory's first big break as a comedian came in 1961, when he filled in at Hugh Hefner's Playboy Club in Chicago. Gregory went on to become a national sensation. The Tonight Show with Jack Paar had him on as a guest, but as Gregory told CBS Sunday Morning this June, that was only after he demanded to be invited to sit for a chat.
White comics could sit on the couch. A black comic couldn't.
Are you a good audience tonight, and treat me nice, because with President Kennedy's new housing bill, I might be your neighbor now.
Gregory soon moved his activism from the stage to the streets, to rally for civil rights and against the Vietnam War and police brutality. He was still using satire for social justice when he fell ill earlier this month. On Facebook this weekend, his family announced his death, caused by an aneurysm set in motion by what one of his sons described as years of severe fasting for social change. Gregory was 84. Roxana Saberi for CBS News.